Thank you for joining us on Listen Up, the Buescher Bible Podcast. We're in Proverbs Chapter 22 today, so we're kicking it into high gear. To get it started, so verse 1 of chapter 22 says, "A good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, loving favor rather than silver and gold." So Jesus said it this way: "What profit is a man if he gains the whole world but loses his own soul?" This is very, very similar. It has basically the same meaning, right? It's better to choose a good name over riches, because what can you give in exchange for your own soul? So you trade away your soul for quick profit and being able to cheat people and all this kind of stuff, but you've lost something far more precious than what you've gained. Riches compared to your eternal soul are nothing. And so we need to, one, invest our life into Christ, believe in the Lord Jesus Christ and you will be saved. And that is the greatest act that we can do as far as valuing our own soul. Because when we do that, we agree with God that He paid for our soul with his own blood. And there is no currency more precious than that in the universe. So when we say yes to God, what we're also saying yes to is like, thank you for choosing to save me, and thank you for this amazing sacrifice that you've made for me. It is the best thing that we can do for ourselves. Verse 2 says, "The rich and the poor have this in common: the Lord is the maker of them all." This is a good reminder of the fact that we are created in the image and likeness of God. And so regardless of somebody's IQ or EQ or bank balance, we are all intrinsically valuable in this life and in the next life. And so the way that we treat each other really matters, because we're not just doing something to a physical being. We are doing something to an eternal creature. And I love the way that C.S. Lewis put it, where he was talking about this concept in The Weight of Glory. Basically, that one day, all of us are either going to be a creature that is so beautiful and amazing that if we were to see it now, we would be tempted to fall down and worship it, or a creature so vile and miserable that if we saw it now, we would cringe in fear and have nightmares forever. Those are the only two paths that our souls are on. And so we are created in the image and likeness of God. We're eternal, and we need to have that respect and goodwill towards each other. And also, this then applies out into so many different things, because the way that we treat our enemies, the way that we treat our neighbors, flow from this concept that we are created in the image and likeness of God, and that we are intrinsically valuable, and that we are eternal. So, the question is just, are you going to believe in Jesus and be saved, or are you going to reject Jesus and try to find salvation in your own strength, which so far no one has accomplished doing? Verse 3 says, "A prudent man foresees evil and hides himself, but the simple pass on and are punished." One of the keys of wisdom is seeing the end of your path as you're walking on it, instead of encountering the consequences whenever they may come. So, said another way, a wise person is able to anticipate what will happen in the future and makes arrangements for it in advance, where a foolish person, life just happens to them, and they're constantly surprised by the bad things that are happening around them and to them, because they weren't anticipating those bad things coming. So think about your actions and ask yourself, where is this going to lead me 5 years from now? And if the answer to those questions is not desirable to you, it's time to change. It's time to change. It's time to take on wisdom. It's time to take on Christ. Verse 4 says, "By humility and the fear of the Lord are riches and honor and life." So again, I want to point out that with wisdom, there's this reality of partaking in the life of Christ and walking in right relationship with him and walking in humility. But the fruit of that is really good, and it encompasses so many different areas of our life, right? So there's riches, there's essentially the prospering of our strength, there's honor, it's the prospering of our relationships, and there's life, it's the prospering of our souls. So when we pursue the Lord, it blesses us in every aspect of life. And the more surrendered we are to Him, the more that we see that come to fruition. So our challenge really is to receive the blessings that the Lord wants to give us and to walk in a way that we are worthy of the blessings that God wants to give us. So when the Lord blesses us, we shouldn't be ungrateful. We shouldn't be afraid of them, but we should embrace them with joy because they are a blessing and they're a gift from God. Verse 5 says, "Thorns and snares are in the way of the perverse. He who guards his soul will be far from them." And friends, we have to guard our soul. We can't just wander through life and expect that our soul is going to come out untainted or better off than it was at the beginning of our journey. We have to guard it. We have to watch over it because it is susceptible to damage, and it is susceptible to sickness, and it is susceptible to sin. So we want our soul to be healthy, and therefore we need to take actions that are in alignment with our soul being in the best condition that it can be. Part of that is guarding it from evil. Part of that is guarding it from bad influences. There's this really famous set of statues, and it's the hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil. Those three things. But that is part of guarding your soul. And I know that our society mocks at that a lot, but it really is a powerful and useful tool for us to guard our souls and say, I just am not going to let this into the gate of my heart and of my life. I think about entertainment like Game of Thrones. And I know that it has a good storyline and there's a lot of interesting characters and blah, 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 blah. But there is so much garbage in that too. Just outright sin and debauchery and horrible examples and all of this kind of stuff. And so when we partake in that kind of a media, we are setting ourselves up for the destruction of our souls. And we are not being diligent about guarding our souls. You are not going to be happier in heaven for having seen Game of Thrones. Your life is not going to be more complete for watching those things. It's part of the reason that I don't have Netflix anymore. There's just so much garbage on Netflix, especially sexual garbage on Netflix. And it just seems like it's getting more and more perverse. And it's like, why would I let that into my soul? Why would I let that into my heart? It's way better to be discerning and to say no to things that are damaging to your soul, because it does two things for you. The first thing that it does is it corrupts your soul, right? The second thing that it does is that it takes away your capacity to pursue things that are good. And we all have the same amount of time in a day. We have 24 hours, right? But we don't all use it as effectively as each other. A lot of us are slaves to entertainment, and we're wasting our lives and we're wasting our potential because of it. And some of us are redeeming that time because we understand that it's very limited and precious. And so when we are consuming this kind of trash entertainment that is full of sin and it's full of evil and it's full of vice, we damage our own souls and we lose the precious time that we have to pursue growth in our character and growth in our relationship with the Lord and caring for other people and helping the poor and doing so many other things that are actually good and going to change and bless society. Verse 9 says, "He who has a generous eye will be blessed, for he gives of his bread to the poor." And I was thinking about this in the terms of generosity. Generosity is one of these really powerful, counterintuitive things in our life where we think that so often we think that our financial resources, our health, are our own. And we really clamp down, hold on to them to a degree that it ends up hurting us and destroying us and really gives us this unhealthy mentality towards wealth and towards our own health. and these sorts of things, because we get this really strong entitlement mentality when it comes to wealth, and we're not generous. We think that we are owed it. We are owed these experiences. We're owed this money. And if somebody else tries to, cut into that time or into our money, that they are an evil entity or person. And when we are generous, it breaks us free from that mentality, because we come to the relieving knowledge that we're not owed anything. We don't deserve anything. There's nothing that it's like, oh yeah, well, I can spend my money however I want to without any negative repercussions because it all belongs to me. That attitude totally goes away as we're generous, because we realize that our money is the Lord's money, and that when we use it for the Lord's work, it is so much more productive, and it's so much bigger of a blessing to us and to the people around us. And it becomes a delight to engage in that work. So being generous sets us free from being slaves to money and slaves to entitlement. So choose the generous way, have a generous eye, and be somebody who is ready to give. Verse 13 says, "The lazy man says, 'There's a lion outside. I shall be slain in the street.'" So, again, there's so many cloaks for laziness. There's so many reasons to not be diligent. There's so many excuses out there. And if you are led astray by your own heart, then you are never going to be wise. You're never going to be rich. You're never going to prosper in your relationship with the Lord, because there's always an excuse. There's always a reason. There's always a justification. And this is one of the things that wisdom teaches us, is that we need to reject justifications. When we are walking in wisdom, we're walking in humility, and we're saying, "God, you're right." And instead of saying, "Well, God, you just don't understand because I really needed that thing, and so it was right for me to steal." There's none of that going on in our hearts. We agree with God in humility, and so we put off the works of darkness and we put on the works of light. But when we are in this place of laziness, self-indulgence, gluttony essentially is the way that the ancients described it, but it's self-indulgence, right? Then we are setting ourselves up for failure, and we're basically putting our justifications over any other truth. And we're saying that the manipulative, warped way that we're seeing the world, and therefore justifying our actions, is more valuable and more important than what God says, what his word says, and humbling ourselves before him. So it's really important that we evaluate the excuses that we're using, because oftentimes they're just justification for our own self-centeredness. Verse 15 says, "Foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child. The rod of correction will drive it far from him." So again, it kind of relates to what I was talking about, right? We all have foolishness in our hearts. We all want to gratify our self-centeredness. But as we grow, we learn to put aside our self-centeredness. And one of the main ways that we do that is by discipline and having consequences for our actions. If there are no consequences for our self-centeredness, then we will become more and more self-indulgent, to the point that we end up destroying our lives and our relationships and our family's relationships, and we end up destroying the blessings that we're being given in life. So what we don't want to do is set our children up for destruction. Therefore, we also need to have boundaries for our kids. And I know that there are people that struggle with boundaries. I know for me, when I was growing up, there was one or two times that my parents would be angry and they disciplined me out of anger. And I would make this promise to myself of when I have kids, I'll never do it that way. And now that I'm older and I have kids, I realize how hard it is to parent, and nobody bats 1,000. Nobody's perfect. Everybody makes mistakes in their parenting. And what my parents did that was really good is they would apologize to us when they realized that they corrected us out of anger, or they were too harsh with their punishments. And that's something that I try to do for our children as well, which is a very humbling thing. It takes dying to yourself to do that, because, there's so many different justifications you can use to be lazy, essentially, in your relationship with your kids. But that being said, it is always a net benefit to have healthy boundaries and enforce those boundaries in love. And even if you make mistakes and you err, it is better to be consistent, persistent, and thoughtful in your discipline than to be indulgent and a pushover and somebody that lets your kids set the tone of your home. So be somebody that disciplines your kids, and be somebody that has healthy boundaries, because you also need those as an adult, and you need those towards other adults as well if you're going to live in a healthy way. All right, so verse 17 down through 21 or 22? 21. They're a little narrative section. I'm going to read all of these because I think that they are just a good reminder. I know that we kind of covered this theme a lot at the beginning of our study in Proverbs back in the early days of September. But I want to read this one again because it's a good reminder to us of the blessing of pursuing wisdom. And so I want us to think about this as like, this is the Lord addressing us, out of love. He says, "Incline your ear and hear the words of the wise, and apply your heart to my knowledge. For it is a pleasant thing if you keep them within you. Let them all be fixed upon your lips. So let your trust always be in the Lord. I have instructed you today, even you. Have I not written to you excellent things of counsels and knowledge, that I may make you known, that I may make you know the certainty of the words of truth, that you may answer the words of truth to those who send you." So again, it's this really beautiful challenge and invitation to enter into wisdom and into a deep relationship with the Lord. The fear of the Lord, again, is knowing rightly who God is and living that out. And the fear of the Lord is like an introduction to God. It can bring us to the Lord, but until we cross over into faith and trust in the Lord and dependence on the Lord and submission to the Lord, the fear of the Lord has not had its full work in our lives. It's not enough to know that God is and to shake in fear and tremble. The demons even do that, right? But to know the Lord and to trust him and to place your life in his hands, right? To believe on the Lord Jesus Christ and be saved. That is the fulfillment of wisdom, and it's the fulfillment of the fear of the Lord in our lives. All right. Verse 28 says, "Do not remove the ancient landmark which your fathers have set." In Israel, how they had inheritances was different than we have in the United States. In the United States, we sell homes, we sell land, and when we sell them, they're gone forever. There are very few things that have a redemption clause in their sale. But in Israel, that was not true. In Israel, the land was divided to the tribes, and then each tribe's territory was divided out to its clans, and each clan's territory was divided out into its families. And so land always stayed in your family, and there were provisions for how that worked, and it was well thought out. And the way that it was supposed to be executed was every year of Jubilee, which was 7 sets of 7 years. They would proclaim a holy feast, and the land would rest, and everyone would go back to their inheritance. So if you sold your land, you only sold it until the next year of Jubilee, and then your land was redeemed. So throughout Israel, they would have these boundary stones. They would have these landmarks set up to denote, like, these territories, these fields belong to this family in this clan in this tribe. So somebody that would remove the ancient landmarks was somebody that was trying to steal generational wealth and generational legacy. They were pretty despicable, honestly, if you think about it like that, because they would have to be taking it from somebody that was their neighbor for it to actually do them any good. They would walk around their own boundary and they would say, well, no one will notice if I just like push this rock 2 feet to the left and expand my boundary a little bit and expand my boundary a little bit and expand my boundary a little bit. So there's this warning: do not remove the ancient landmarks which your fathers have set up. And in our society, there are spiritual landmarks that our fathers have set up. And when we remove those things, we do it to not only our hurt, but the hurt of all of our future generations. There's this really strong spiritual Christian heritage in the United States of America. There's a strong Christian heritage in the United Kingdom and in Australia and in Germany and in France and in Greece and in Finland and in Switzerland and in Africa and in Egypt and in the Middle East and in China and in India. And to try to erase that heritage is not only harming yourself and your community and being dishonest to the people around you, but it has the potential to hurt future generations upon generation upon generation. What we are supposed to do is recognize the ancient landmarks. We're supposed to honor that wisdom. We're supposed to pass it on and steward it for the generations to come. When we do that, we remember that we are part of an eternal story and an eternal song that has far preceded us and will continue on for ages after us. And what we want to do is run the race well that has been set before us. So don't remove the ancient landmarks. Don't do it in your life. Okay, the Word of God is one of your greatest ancient landmarks. It is full of the wisdom of the ancients and the truth of the ancients and the truth of God and the love of God for you and the story of His salvation and His desire to enter into relationship with you. So when you surrender to Him and you partake on that journey, you join a legacy with thousands of years of faithful brothers and sisters who lived for God and loved God. Verse 29 says, "Do you see a man who excels in his work? He will stand before kings. He will not stand before unknown men." So I think that that's an encouragement. We've had a lot of encouragements to be diligent in our work, but there haven't been as many proverbs that have centered around this concept of be excellent in your work. So there is this encouragement to be excellent in our work, because when we are excellent in our work, not only do we have nothing to be ashamed of with our work, but we also essentially our work enters into a new realm of spiritual significance, also physical significance. It's something that can affect and move nations and kings. So when we pour ourselves into excellence and trying to become the master of our field, it is a good work and it is a great thing. It is rare for a person to reach excellence. But it is a noble calling to pursue excellence. I can only think of a couple of people in our generation and in our time that I would say have reached a level of excellence. And any one of them, if I said their name, you would instantly recognize them and be like, oh yeah, that I know that person's name. And it's because they have reached a point of excellence. And, not all of them are Well, I will say this. There's notoriety, so there's fame for a worthy cause, and there is also notoriety for dishonorable causes. And so don't be a person who's excellent in evil, right? But be a person who is excellent in good and pursuing the vocation that God has set before you. Do your work well, do it as unto the Lord, and pursue excellence so that when you enter into heaven, you can say that everything that you did was indeed an act of worship. Well, friends, have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.